just remind you of what it entails?
Yeah, if you just go through it and then we can just have a talk, about some of the issues.
All right, so it's exploring pedagogical practices in a communication course for undergraduate students.
Yeah.
A self-study. I actually went through the higher degree committee and they accepted my proposal on condition I made specific changes. And that's what I'd like to ask you about. Some of the changes were, they mentioned the fact that I should include a little bit more of my own identity, because I'm interested in my students' identities, and I just wondered how I could go about including more of that in the course of gathering my data.
Yeah, sure. In relation to your own, you can say identity. What I usually do is encourage self-study researchers, including myself, to write what we call an autobiography of their own learning. So you would actually think back to those experiences which have really moved you to be doing what you are now doing. So it relates to what you really care about, what really matters to you. And you could send that to me or to Daisy or to anyone else, just to share an understanding about the reasons why you feel you're doing what you are doing. And it helps people get on the inside of the values that you're actually living by.
Right. Okay, that's excellent. So the values are very important, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And when I look at that, does that include memory work as well?
Very much so.
Is that part of it? Is that all part of it?
Yeah, it is, very much so. There's a nice paper by Jean McNiff called My Story is My Living Educational Theory. And it's in a Jean Clandinin edited book, which was on narrative inquiry, mapping a methodology.
That's not...
So there are quite a few very nice illustrations, and everybody's different, of course, in terms of the, the story that you would tell.
Yes, definitely. Gosh. All right, that's excellent. Thank you. And then obviously Daisy also felt that it would be wonderful to work on some of these things in preparation for that ERA conference.
Yeah.
Because it was also to do with the supervisory, and she felt that she wanted to allow me opportunity to speak with yourself, a specialist, in terms of also part of her supervising of my study as well. So that would be a connection between her as supervisor, myself as a novice researcher, and filling in a lot of these issues for that paper where we all combine to present. Does that make sense?
It makes really good sense. I'm doing a joint one with Jackie DeLong, and Jackie was one of my PhD students, and Jackie is now studying her relationship with her master's students, and I've been working with her and with Skype with some of the master's students. And we're actually trying to explain the educational influence of this kind of pedagogy, which crosses boundaries. I'm in the UK, Jackie is in Canada. But it may be that we could actually share some of our writings together, because with Daisy looking at her supervision with you looking at your inquiry, and perhaps Daisy's influence with your learning, I think that would be very exciting.
All right, that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Now, could I just mention, Wendy, that one of the things I'm doing later today is I'm videotaping through Skype a relationship that I have with Joan Walton, who's the director of the Centre for the Child and Family. She's also a former PhD student of mine. And we're looking at the nature of the values that Joan is expressing in relation to a big conference she organises June, which I videotaped. Now, with what I noticed with Daisy and yourself was what I call life-affirming energy between you. When I saw you, there was a life and a vitality, as well as values that I believe that you share. And sometimes it's the video, the visual data that helps you get closer to an understanding of some of those values.
Oh, right. Yes, yes. So you felt there was already something there that could be explored further.
Oh, very much so. That it just felt, well, what I'm trying to work on with both Jackie DeLong and Joan Walton, I think will resonate with some of your own values and the relational qualities that you establish with Daisy as you're trying to look at the nature of the pedagogy that you're working on in terms of your research.
Yes. So do you think that we should do a similar thing with videoing or the video?
I do, Wendy. I think you'd find it really helpful. The woman, I could send you a paper that's being published in the Journal of Living Theories from an Irish academic called Yvonne Grotti. And you'll see what Yvonne has actually managed to do. I'm very impressed with this foreword to this new issue. And
excellent.
Yeah. So, it'd be nice if you fancied having a chat with Daisy, and then we could have another of these Skype conversations. It would be good if you could get the webcam working.
Yes, sorry. I'm so sorry
Oh,
about
don't
that.
Don't worry.
Yeah. And that would be wonderful if Daisy were also part of that.
Yeah, it would.
Yes. And would that be preferable possibly in January? Because I don't know how.
To be honest, I do a lot of writing now at home.
Do you?
Yes, it's like this now that, when I'm on Skype, you can always give me a ring. So it would be to fit in with both of you. I can easily do these kinds of Skype conversations. We could even,
Yes.
I've got what's called call recorder, which means I could record them and I could make them available on a private network in Skype. I am YouTube. So there's a way in which we could work at this if you wanted to.
All right, well, thank you. I'll definitely mention that to Daisy, and I'm sure she would be interested as well. Thank you, because I think we can learn from what others have already done. I would appreciate, too, if you could send me that link with the Irish...
I'll send you in the separate emails. I'll send you G. McNiff's paper about my story is my living theory. And in a separate mail, because it's quite a large file, I'll send you the Yvonne Grotti paper that should be published in a fortnight. So you'll just get an idea of the use of the visuals to communicate values and emotion.
Right, thank you, because I know you mentioned to me about using the video and visual methodology with my own students, and I'm definitely going to do that, because I feel there is something that comes across that is not in text, and I believe that the values and just those life-affirming values, that will come strongly through using that methodology. So I'm excited about that.
Good.
And then just to get on to something more to do with the self-study, I'm choosing to use a narrative inquiry. Do you feel that has a place in my study? I mean,
I do.
Do you feel that has value?
I really do, Wendy. That for me, the kind of action research I've been supporting, where each individual creates their own explanation of their influence, are all narratives. So narrative, it feels to me, is really crucial. You could encourage your students, if they would, to produce the stories of their own learning. It's that kind of, which could then link in with your explanation of your influence, and you could be getting your students' voices coming through your own account. Now, the idea of a narrative as a story, which contains an explanation of educational influence in learning, will give you, I think, your thesis.
Oh, excellent. Yes, because I think the high degree committee as well, although I had said that, I obviously didn't explain it clearly enough. But that what you've just said about the explanation of the educational influence, that I need to more thoroughly perhaps explicate and clarify so that can be seen more strongly. Because I think it has great value, and that's what I believe the students need to, I would love for their voice to be heard in the learning and their explanation of the learning that is taking place, or the limitation of the learning that's taking place. So that explains quite a lot in terms of that. And do you think then my identity can, other than doing an autobiographical explanation of my own learning, do you think it can continue throughout the research in some way?
Very much so, Wendy, because even now when I'm going up to Liverpool, my own understandings are evolving. So if you clarify the values that give meaning and purpose to your life, those values, you clarify them, but they're also evolving. And you,
good.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can use those as explanatory principles continuously through the course of the research. But I would just mention this, that I think you'll find that you're being responsive to your students in relation to their learning needs. So continuously you will be modifying what you do in relation to what you see your students need. And to document this kind of responsiveness of yours, you will be able to, I think, to explain some of your influence in relation to the learning that takes place with your students in their own voices. And part of that will be your responsiveness. Do you see what I'm meaning?
Because yes, that's good. That's excellent. Yes, and so it's an adaptation and a modifying constantly and responding to them.
Yeah, and this is part of your own growth, of your own identity as an educator.
Okay, I need to explain that more clearly, which I haven't done.
Okay.
That's very good. Thank you. And then just in terms of how I engage my colleagues, I've said that I will speak to them in an informal manner. Do you think that's preferable to doing evaluations, written evaluations? Because they said I needed to make clearer how I'm going to engage my colleagues.
Yeah, again, I'll send you a quote from Gadamer, Hans-Georg Gadamer, about conversation, what he calls the art of conversation. Now, I think you'll find that if you engage your colleagues, literally through informal conversations about what it is, your intentions and your values, and share with them some of your interests and questions, you'll be able to engage them within conversations which are actually learning conversations. They're actually educational conversations over time. Now, that I find with people here is by far the best way of doing it. Rather than think of yourself as an external researcher observing people, that you're participant, you're engaging. This is your action research where you're trying to enhance your influence, and you're engaging others to try to assist you in that process. Are you okay with this, Wendy?
Yes, totally.
Okay.
Yes. So do you recommend, in order to make it more, how can I say, more scholarly, would I then record those conversations? And how would I not only collect the data, how would I then evaluate that data?
Okay. What you would do, Wendy, is keep this idea of all the time you're trying to improve your influence, the educational influence you're having. Now, if you'll produce, we call them draft research reports, which are an explanation of your influence. Now, your colleagues, you could ask them, would they be prepared to act as what we call a validation group? And you would just get them together to respond to your account, which would involve some of their influences. You'll be making some claims about them and their influence with you. Now, Habermas has got 4 criteria, which I always use. And you could ask your colleagues to help you to strengthen the validity of your accounts by using 4 criteria. And I could send you these and we could have some correspondence about it, but they are comprehensibility. You ask them, how could you enhance the comprehensibility of your explanation? How could you strengthen the evidential base of your explanation in relation to the claims you're making? The third one is to do with what is called the normative background. Because in South Africa, like everywhere else in the world, there are different cultural influences which are often unexplicated. So you could ask your colleagues if your account shows that you're a growing awareness of this normative influence and how it's influencing your explanations. And the fourth one, Habermas says, he says, look, we've got to show over time and interaction our authenticity, that we truly believe in the values that we claim to hold. So you could ask your colleagues just to keep a check on your authenticity in terms of the explanations that you're producing. Now, those would be the 4 criteria which will help to give the rigor and the scholarship to your explanations.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for. Yes, definitely, to give the rigor that is required, because otherwise I could be accused of being too subjective or just putting forward my views. But if as you suggested, I've asked my colleagues to look at it using these criteria, then that is a definite way of making it more scholarly and also validating what I've been saying. And it's a check against which. So that's excellent. I remember you speaking about Habermas, and I felt that was a very valuable tool.
Yeah.
So I can also explain that in my paper as well, how I'm going to make use of that. That's excellent. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Good.
Yes. And then obviously at the end as well, I would enable would I be able to ask my colleagues, after having looked at data collected from our students, whether that also their views, whether that would be valid in terms of our final production of what I collect?
Most definitely. The big thing, Wendy, is to bear in mind that if you produce these research reports, don't just think of a final report. You're going to build up drafts and then to redrafts. So you're going to be strengthening the validity of your account. And that could include both your students' narratives, but also data from their own learning. Your colleagues would help you to strengthen the validity of any claim that you're making in relation to that use of the data as evidence in your claims, to be understanding or to knowing your educational influence.
Right, so it keeps going back to my educational influence.
It does. And to explain that. Yeah.
Yes. Gosh, there's so much to think about in terms of including the colleagues, but that's such a valid point, because are those colleagues who disagree in terms of their methodology of teaching? I mean, because obviously some of my colleagues have very different views and very different values. So is it worthwhile to get that? Is that a strength?
Yes, it is. I always used to have people in my validation groups, and when I organise them now, I still do the same, just to try to make sure that you get people, some of whom you recognise may be hostile to your approach. But actually, theirs are often very helpful, because their criticism helps you to strengthen your own account so it can withstand the criticism.
Okay, excellent. Yes, I understand that. So, and these colleagues would be lecturers who teach with me as well as other academics. Could that be possible?
It is. It is your peers,
My peers, no matter, and right, that's excellent. Thank you. And then just one last question. Sorry, I don't know how long you plan to take.
No, this is fine, Wendy.
Is it the epistemological stance? Is that very broad? Too broad to ask you for comment on?
No, the importance of the epistemology in terms of, say, a doctorate or a higher degree is concerning the originality of your contribution to knowledge. So the epistemology is really important. Now, where I think you'll find that your originality comes into your explanation is to do what we call standards of judgment.
Yes.
Now, an epistemology is usually distinguished by its logic and what we call the unit of appraisal and the standards of judgment. The unit of appraisal is what is actually being evaluated or judged as a contribution to knowledge. In your case, it will be your narrative, which is an explanation of your educational influence.
Right.
Now, where I think, and this is my intuition, I could share some thoughts with you on this, is that in South Africa, the notion of Ubuntu as a relationally dynamic way of relating and way of being, which I noticed between Daisy and yourself, there was a real relational dynamic between you, which I intuitively felt was very significant indeed in relation to helping people to understand the significance of that relational quality and that relational way of being, which I believe that you'll bring into your educational relationships. Now, that is where I think you'll find you're making your original contribution to educational knowledge. It will be in those relational qualities, it will be the energy that you express with your values. Now, I'm writing a little bit about this at the moment for a paper for a South African journal at Nelson Mandela University, and I'll share that with you when I've done it. So just to see if it resonates with, your own interests.
Oh, yes, that's excellent. So you're suggesting that the whole relational aspect of Ubuntu, which is quite unique in terms of worldwide cultural values, etc., that Daisy and I, in some measure, may in fact reflect that kind of relationship, and that would assist me even in my teaching and the values that I hold and hopefully utilize in the classroom.
I do, Wendy.
Is that what you're suggesting?
It is exactly that. I suspect that by just Wendy and yourself, Daisy and yourself, and I could help with this with the video, we could have a Skype in a week or so. But I think you'll find if we got the three of us together, I could show you quite quickly what I was meaning by that quality of relationship, which I think you'll check out whether you bring that into your relationships with your students. My intuition is that you actually relate in a way that opens up a creative space for your students. You want very much to hear their voices, and that you'll be able to explain your influence as you respond to them, and then look at the nature of their learning in their own voices. Now, what I could do for you, if you like, is just put this conversation onto YouTube so you could just access it if it's any use to you.
Yes, thank you very much. That would be excellent.
Okay.
And in fact, Daisy, I think, would also enjoy that too,
Okay.
because then she could, because I'm so sorry too that the webcam wasn't working, but I think it's so valuable to watch again and listen to your words of wisdom, actually. And I understand you have such a passion for learning and teaching, and it comes through in values, because that's something that in the past I haven't seen too much of in terms of looking at education. It's often the facts and the content, but I love the idea that it's so much more than that. And I think that's what I love about your work is the value that you place on values and relationships.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, it's really good to hear that, because this evening I'm going to be videoing John Walton with a friend, and we're looking at the nature of philosophy as loving wisdom. Okay, so
yes, gosh.
So again, I'll share some of these as they come through, Wendy, so that we do actually just continue to share if you find it helpful. And again, just say to Wendy, I really am available, because I do a lot of work at home, and it will be over the next month. And if you want to check anything out with me, do so. I'll put this onto YouTube. I'll send you the URL so you can just see, if there's anything that's of value that you can reflect back on with Daisy.
Yes, definitely. That would be excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much, Jack. I hope that it's been. Oh, I've certainly learned a lot.
No, when it's a mutual way, honestly, Wendy. I was very excited when I heard Daisy and yourself, in South Africa, and it will be mutual learning together. I mean, I'm enjoying this very much.
Oh, excellent. And then just looking at self-study itself, the way in which the living theories link in with that has a very real place, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So living theories can include a lot more of what we've been talking about. How do you link that into self-study? It's not a separate issue, but it can be part of self-study, can't it?
It has to be. If you right, not all self-studies are living theories. All living theories have to be self-studies. That if you produce an explanation of your own educational influence in learning, you have to engage in a self-study of your own practice. As you ask yourself, how do I improve what I'm doing? But there are ways of engaging in self-study which don't produce living theories. A self-study needn't focus on a question such as, how do I improve my practice? You could engage in a purely introspective study of yourself using, for example, Jungian psychoanalysis. That would be a self-study.
Yes. Right. So basically, that was one of the comments as well, that they said perhaps, because obviously I'm wanting to improve my practice, and I'd said that mine was interpretive. I was using an interpretive approach. But then one of the higher degree committee members said I should perhaps say that it's more critical. What is your opinion of that?
You've got a choice. It depends on the ideology of the person speaking to you. That even a critical approach is interpretive. You can't get away from interpretation. But if you're being asked to adopt a critical approach, it's likely to be coming from a particular ideological perspective of known as critical theory. Now, you can bring critical theories into the creation of your own living theory. But you can just be asked to adopt a critical approach, which means that really you'll be making a contribution to critical theory. So you'll have to make a judgment about where you want your contribution to be in relation to the nature of the knowledge you're constructing.
So do you think it's preferable to be interpretive rather, because that can encompass elements of critical theory, but it's not in that paradigm?
Yes, my own feeling is that you will use insights from a variety of theoretical perspectives. One will be critical, another will be interpretive. There are a large number of them, like being constructivist. There is a phenomenological perspective. There's grounded theory. There are a whole range of different insights that you can use from traditional forms of theory and methodology. And we could chat about that, as the research develops. But you could certainly talk about yours being an interpretive study, which draws on critical theory. There's no issue with that.
Yes. No, and I think I'm so used to the whole idea of the traditional approach where you don't ever mix any of those things. But I understand from your stance, it's very real to do that. And it actually has elements of many of those different theories.
Yeah, it does. In fact, I've got something on the web. And again, I don't want to overload you with stuff, but I did a critique of Creswell's 5 methodological approaches. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'll send you that because it's making the point that we're now talking about in terms of being able to draw insights from different methodological approaches. You don't have to do what Creswell, I believe, is advocating, which is choosing one approach. My point is that there are valuable insights from any of these approaches, and you can actually draw these into the creation of your own living theory.
Gosh, yes, that would be excellent. But now, is it onerous for you to send me all these different readings and papers and that? Because I'd love to do some of the reading on that.
It's not at all, Wendy. I mean, when we finish now, I'll just see if I can get this onto YouTube. I'll just look for some of these papers, and if I've forgotten any, you just email me, or if you want anything else, and then I'll see what I can do just to send things on. So, it's a pleasure for me to assist. So do just ask, whenever you feel you want responses.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jack. I hope that's covered some of the things that we've discussed. And I know, Daisy, I hope that will also be helpful for her. So I so appreciate your time again. And
pleasure.
I hope to be in touch again soon sometime, depending on Daisy's schedule.
Yeah, we'll chat with Daisy, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much again.
Okay.
I really appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye then. Bye.